Hey, what's up, Zach here, and today I've got the all-new Nike Vapor 11, and these shoes were a little confounding to me because, remember, we went from the Vapor 10 to the Vapor Pro, now we're going from the Vapor Pro to the Vapor Pro 2, and the Vapor Pro to the Vapor 11 as well. You know, do they play similar to the Vapor Pro 2? There's a lot of unanswered questions on these. Of course, also thank you to Tennis Point USA for sending me a pair of the Vapor 11s to check out. If you do want to buy a pair of these after this review, I will leave a link in the description below. And heads up, make sure you stick to the end because this is the first video I am debuting the new universal rating system for all these shoes, because in the comment section in the community, you've been asking, rightfully so, for a more standardized ratings of a shoe's speed, its bounce, its comfort, durability, things like that. So the jump height test, shuttle test, sometimes, you know, they don't translate from shoe to shoe. And so even if I've reviewed a shoe a year ago, you can still compare them side by side. So make sure you stick around to the end for that. Now, getting into the uppers of the Vapor 11, they remind me of two shoes, the Court Zoom Next and the Vapor Cage 4. Along the medial side, you have an entire bed of TPU going all the way from the height of the lace line into the rubber that does come up over the toe cap for a drag guard, which I do really like, and it goes all the way down, which I really just like all this caging in here. Plus, the way that this TPU is oriented, it also keeps the shoe pretty flexible, doesn't really bog it down. Whereas on the lateral side of the shoe, yeah, you got this TPU container around here, which we'll talk about when we get to the midsole. But then you also have, it's almost like Nike Sphere, but it's not. You get this TPU woven mesh here, this caging, and then you have just traditional threads interspersed for more strength. But then if you look in the toe cap of the shoe, you actually have another reinforcing mesh layer underneath that going all the way around the toe cap for a little more durability. Because if you look at the upper durability test, the Dremel 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, yeah, it does have that drag guard hub. Remember, they are spaced out a little bit. So the Dremel still does get into that meshing layer. The thing is because it is reinforced from the bottom and then TPU from the top, even if you are a really extreme dragger, I do think you're gonna get decent durability just because the outsole rubber rides up so high on the toe cap. However, it just can't be denied that there is this little gap in between the rubber and the thicker pieces of TPU that some people, if you're really an extreme toe dragger, you might start popping through. But the one thing I'm still just not thrilled about in the new Vapor line shoes is the lacing system. You know, the lockdown on these as well as the Pros is just not nearly as good as the Vapor 10s were, which were absolutely elite. And honestly, the Vapor Pros I thought were pretty good too. Whereas in these, yeah, you got some eyelets that are reinforced around there, and you do have an internal lacing system here in the ankle. However, I just couldn't feel like I could get them super locked down. The ankle lockdown is okay because these outrigger lace eyelets do just lace down a bigger chunk of the ankle collar, and because the ankle collar is just a little higher here on the medial side versus the lateral side. Remember, these lace eyelets can start to fray too. I mean, I get the idea. You don't want laces here in the peak of the medial ankle collar for people that slide on it. You'll just rip through the laces. But I think you can just engineer something a little bit more durable on the inside, and I just think the lockdown could just be a little bit better. But getting into the midsole teardown, this is what I was most curious about, to see kind of what they were going to look like versus the Vapor Pro. And once again, a full bed of pretty dense EVA with that protruding zoom air unit in the forefoot. Once again, it is very wide, so it really doesn't do anything in terms of stability. The shoe is pretty stable when you're up on the balls of your foot, so that really is not an issue. However, these do have this little plastic shank on the bottom of the shoe and just some a little bit harder rubber here with this Nike symbol. So there really isn't any bottom or top loaded shank on there, same as the Vapor Pros. However, the one thing that the Vapor 11s do have, which I alluded to earlier, is this TPU chassis that goes all the way around the lateral side of the shoe, wraps around the heel counter, and comes all the way here to the medial heel. Now, that wouldn't look like it would do anything for the midsole foam. However, these do end up sharing quite a bit of weight with the midsole foam, so this will be a much more durable foam setup than the Vapor Pro. Yeah, you're still gonna get more bottoming than you would with a shoe that would have just a standard shank underneath of it. However, because this is so broad, it captures so much of the midsole, and because tennis is played so much side to side, an external kind of outrigger shank can still get the job done. But getting into the outsole tread, this is another one of those metal tank track type patterns where there really is no tread depth in the forefoot. It's these kind of razor claws all the way throughout the shoe. And then once you get into the rear foot of the shoe, you do get a little bit more chunky tread depth in there. Now, this pattern is really just made for hard courts, and it is made for really easy and efficient hard court sliding. The front part of the shoe will be able to slide pretty easily, but then build up enough friction during your slide. So then once that rubber warms up, be able to go the opposite direction. Remember, these are not going to be stop on a dime shoes. Now, if you are pivoting off of your heel, this will start to chunk into the court and give you a little better grip. So I would say if you do come to kind of like a screeching stop where you kind of push your heel out, you will get a harder stop. I feel like most people that kind of slide in with their forefoot, these are going to give a little bit. Now, these do have a pretty decent, really posterior rocker to them. So these do transition from stride to stride a little bit easier than some other shoes with full length tread pattern, just because you have the forefoot zoom air unit plus the rear foot rocker, giving you just a little bit more forgiveness there. And if you look at the outsole durability test, the Dremel 10-second tire grit sandpaper, I mean, same as Vapor Pros, really not even a millimeter of damage on these. So it is a very hard rubber compound, but remember, you're going to need that if you're sliding into a lot of shots and building up a lot of heat. The durometer on these comes in at 20.7, so very hard rubber compound. Just remember, these shoes are meant for more forgiveness, not as much stop on a dime power. But getting into the fit of the Vapor 11s, this is where the Pros and the 11s have done a little bit better than some other shoes. They are a little bit boxier in the forefoot, the lateral flange is a little bit wider, and they're just a little more hot dog shaped, so they will fit a narrow, medium, and wide foot. I would say though, if you're somebody with heel pain, Achilles tendonitis, painful flat foot, remember that foam is just not as forgiving. It is a little bit more dense. Ball of foot pain, I think, is okay. That forefoot zoom air unit does take up a lot of room in the shoe. But for anything midfoot to rear foot, these shoes are gonna be a little bit unforgiving if you don't have an orthotic in there. And even then, remember, the lockdown is not as elite as some other shoes. So it better be a pretty low profile orthotic in there if you're gonna get one. I'll leave some link in the description below that I like for them. And so with all that being said, that brings us to the universal rating system of the Vapor 11. Now this is 8 categories, 5 points each, total out of 40. And for the first category, containment, I am going to give them a 3 out of 5, just because I do love this truss on the outside here. I do think it gives a ton of lateral stability, as well as gives a lot of stability to the heel counter. I will say, if you do put a chunkier, more rugged shoelace in these, you will get a much better lockdown. You should be able to tie it tighter, so I will leave some link in the description. However, the lockdown durability, we'll talk about in the durability section. And for number 2, bounce, I'm giving them a 2 out of 5, because you really can't get any bounce out of these unless you're putting constant energy into the zoom area. You have to keep putting your own energy into it, because there's nothing to load potential energy into the shoe. So if you're up at net a lot, bouncing up and down all the time, split stepping constantly, then I think they'll be okay. Anything else, they're gonna feel a little dull. And number 3, shock absorption, I'm gonna give them a 2 again, because they will absorb a lot of energy going side to side. It's just how dense that foam is from the midfoot to the heel. It just gives them not the greatest shock absorbing profile, in my opinion. And number 4, support. What I mean by that is how the shoe cradles you going from bottom to top as well as side to side. And for that, I am giving these a 4 out of 5, because while the shoe is new, that dense foam does give a lot of support to your arch, as well as that outrigger truss does contain your foot really well. So in terms of initial support, definitely a 4 out of 5. Once the shoe gets older though, that number is going to start to go down and down and down. And for speed, I'm giving these a 2 out of 5, because once again, they're just not very lively in a straight line. They do really well going side to side for more flowing footwork in a contained space. I do like that a lot. If you're trying to get out of the way for a ball, for an inside out forehand, these are awesome. It's just from getting from one end of the court to the other is where these things kind of start to drag. And for number 6, durability, I'm going to give these a 3 out of 10, just because I really am kind of concerned about this little potential space right here between the rubber and the upper TPU pieces, as well as because the midsole foam does not have a shank holding it up. Plus with the outrigger lace eyelets, I am afraid when you start to pull them over and over again, especially if you're trying to crank these down, that might start to go. So, you know, the outsole tread, the durability is phenomenal. It's just the other pieces of the shoe are not what get it into that elite 4 to 5 territory. Now number 7, comfort. Honestly, everything besides the midsole foam is super comfortable in these shoes. So I'm gonna give them a 3 out of 5 because the midsole foam is the majority of what makes up the comfort of a shoe. However, the forefoot zoom air unit feels really good under the balls of your foot. The uppers on these do feel really buttery for how maximalist they are. So I'd say if you throw an orthotic in these, I think you bump that up to a 4 or a 5. On their own, 3 out of 5. And last but not least, playability. I do think these stay at a 3 out of 5 because for the right player, they do play extremely well. If you're looking for a shoe for really durable sliding, especially if you slide on your forefoot, these are gonna be really nice. If you're someone like me, like I said, that almost likes to ice skate around the court with their feet, they kind of drag and slide everywhere. However, it is a little bit of a bottom heavy shoe again. The rubber on these is just a heavier product. And if you've been paying attention to the medial side of the shoe, it might remind you of another older shoe, which would be the Nike Court Ballistic 2.3, another really bottom heavy shoe, except in the Court Ballistic, you had max air in the heel, as well as a super stiff bottom loaded shank on here. So yeah, I think they borrowed a lot of design inspiration from the old Court Ballistic 2.3, which is one of my favorites. It's just, it doesn't have the snap of the Court Ballistic 2.3 because it doesn't have that stiff shank. And for side-to-side stability in a contained area and side-to-side speed in a contained area, these do get out of your way really well. They also feel a little bit lower to the ground than some other shoes out there, even though they still do have a decent stack. So I'd say for the right player, someone that needs side-to-side speed, someone that brings their own leg strength, and someone that wants a really easy shoe to slide in, they are pretty decent. Now I will be applying this universal rating system to every shoe I've reviewed that is on the market right now. So that will be available in the tennis shoe guide, which is the digital download I have for purchase in the description below. Now, if you do get it right now, I am offering a discount because it is gonna take me a little bit of time to get the ratings into everything. Now remember, you do get free updates throughout the year, so they will get on there. But if you do wanna purchase it right now, I'm offering a discount for everybody that pre-orders it with the universal rating system. So that is down below. And honestly, the biggest elephant in the room is, with the Vapor 11, where does the Vapor Pro sit? And honestly, with how much better the playability is on the Vapor 11 versus the Pro in terms of kind of side-to-side speed, things like that, comfort in the uppers, I'm not sure where the Vapor Pro lands right now. I mean, it is a cheaper option, of course. They're looking to save a little bit of money and get similar durability in the outsole for sure. But I think in terms of playability, I would want the Vapor 11 all day. So that's kind of where I see the Vapor 11 versus the Vapor Pro right now in the Nike lineup. It's really, you want a more budget option for the same durability of rubber if you're getting the Pro versus the 11. And if you'd like to see the deep dive and teardown on the all-new Nike Vapor Pro, make sure you click into this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you in the next one.